We go. Just hold on, finding hope in the face of suicide. The radiator, the heater, and the exact opposite of how you feel. I don't know much about cars, but over the years, I've learned something that could be useful in the battle against depression. I've had a few junk cars in my day. More than once, my car is overheated. If you can't stop and fix the problem, guess what you should do with your car that's overheating? Are you ready? Turn the heat on in the car. That's right. The car is overheating, and you should turn on the heat inside the car. For those of us who are not mechanically inclined, or like me, you don't understand the physics of why this solution works. It sounds like someone's pulling your leg. Turning on the heater in the car won't totally fix your problem, but it could help you get to a service station. If we look at depression as if our engine is overheating, then we need to do the exact thing we don't want to do in order to keep going down the road. Don't feel like calling someone when you're depressed? Call someone anyway. Don't want to go outside? Do the exact opposite of the way you feel and go outside. Don't feel like eating or visiting or going to the store? Eat and go and do anyway. Try doing the exact opposite of what you feel when you are depressed. It probably won't be a long-term cure, but it may get you to a service station. It's just a thought. Here are some quick suggestions to keep your car going forward in life. 50 random yet really useful real-life recommendations that could perhaps relieve the rude reality of depression. Read the Bible, make your bed, go to church, create something, go out to eat with a friend, take your dog for a walk, turn on some Christian music, set a goal for today, go to Bible study, turn off the news and watch a feel-good movie, pray, draw or paint a picture of a cow in a field of green grass surrounded by yellow flowers, put together a puzzle, write a letter or send a card of encouragement to someone, buy yourself some flowers, visit someone in the hospital or nursing home, sing a song, call your mom or someone who loves you like mom, forgive everyone who has offended you, eat a steak, let go of all bitterness, pray for your enemies, call out to God, smile, even if you're alone, confess your sins to another person, confess your sins to God, learn something new, praise God for who He is, read a good book, make some popcorn, go for a jog, eat a piece of fruit, have a cup of strong coffee, go to a Christian concert, take a bike ride, write in your journal, declare the promises of God, read the 23rd Psalm out loud, cook your best dish and invite someone to dinner, take a bubble bath, call someone, text a friend a compliment, thank God for at least 10 things in your life right now, sit outside and listen to the birds singing, buy a gift for someone for no particular reason, begin a project that you've been putting off, vacuum something, take a drive, play a board game with friends, kiss a baby, take a picture, or roast a marshmallow. What if? You may be feeling like I'm simplifying your experience with depression. Certainly, it's not as easy as eating right or getting a dog. To which I say that's probably true. But what if something on this list works to help you keep moving? What if you try some of these things or one or a combination of them? What if they work? What if you tried something different or did the exact opposite of what you feel? What if you could feel better? Would you try something new? My story. As I said in the introduction to this book, I have my own personal story of attempted suicide. I guess that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about helping those in this situation. I remember myself drowning in a sea of despair during my younger years. If only I could have told my 13-year-old self what the future had in store for her. Maybe she would have been able to just hold on. Note to self. Dear 13-year-old self, I know you're going through some tough times right now. Your whole world has fallen apart through your dad's divorce from the only mom you really ever knew. I realize this event has sent you reeling. Now you're in a brand new city, in a brand new school, and every day it's a brand new nightmare. The kids are making fun of you, and as a result, you have crawled under a previously unfamiliar rock of insecurity. You've made a decision. You will either become a star, or you will kill yourself. I know exactly how you feel. You feel lost, lonely, empty, and alone. The music you listen to and sing with every day after the nightmare which is school is most depressing, yet comforting at the same time. As a child, you used to sing in public, but not anymore. Now you only sing to the radio in the room you share with Grandma in Florida. I feel your pain grow as you allow these feelings of helplessness, betrayal, sadness, uselessness, and hopelessness to envelop you. Each and every day you are going deeper into the abyss. No one really understands because you don't explain it to them. Really, who would listen, you reason? You start to think about a way to stop this pain that has become a kind of faithful companion. And the only thing you can think to do is kill yourself. I wish you could see yourself at 49. I know. In your mind, making it past even 18 years old isn't supposed to happen. But I'm here to tell you a story that will blow your mind. I know you're wearing a hat, so hold on to it because I'm about to tell you exactly what your future holds. In the next 5 years, you will continue to deteriorate. You will struggle at school. Oh, not because you don't have the brains to succeed, but because you're preoccupied with the idea of death. You believe your future will be cut short, so why even try at school? You will self-medicate and try all kinds of drugs as a way to self-destruct. While living in Florida, you will be put into a mental hospital where you will not get much help, but where you will learn how to commit suicide the right way. Even with your new knowledge, you will search and search for the perfect way to end your life, but to no avail. And even this will be chalked up to yet another failure, because that's what the loudest voice inside has convinced you that you are, a failure. You will have these certain phrases that are a continuous loop in your mind. Do everyone a favor and kill yourself. You've gone so far, even God has given up on you. Oh, and this is one of the worst things you will hear in your head. You're so worthless, even your own mother abandoned you. But there's this other voice inside that says, what about Grandma? My suicide will ruin her life. Every day for 5 years, you will contemplate suicide and even attempt it several times in a flirting kind of way. It's a miserable way to live, but you will be convinced that suicide is the only way out. Not long after your 18th birthday, you will drive to Ohio to meet your birth mother, whom you haven't seen since you were 3 years old. Alcohol had destroyed her family and her life, but these many years later, she will have become a Christian. For some reason, you won't like that idea. True to form, during your first night at her house, you will cut your wrist. The next morning, when she finds out what you have done, she will say something that you will remember for the rest of your life. Instead of putting you into a program or calling the cops, she will speak these words to you. I'm not going to send you anywhere. I'm going to trust my God with you. Although you will be overjoyed with her response, your pleasure will be short-lived as you get mad at her for something trivial and take off for Florida once again. Months will pass, and the voices will become so loud that you can hardly stand it. Give up! In February 1986, you will do just that. You will no longer care about anyone whom you may hurt by your suicide. You will no longer factor in your previous fear of spending an eternity in hell. You will be totally under the control of the devil himself. At this point, you will make your first serious attempt at suicide by slitting your wrist. The last thing you will remember is the blood squirting into the air as your body crumples into a pile on the bathroom floor. You will wake the next morning with a tube sock wrapped around your wrist, courtesy of the 40-year-old man that you are living with. You won't care that you were unsuccessful. You will try it again that night, and again the next night. The night after that, you will have a vivid dream of a man telling you that you have 1 week to live. You will interpret it that God will never come to save your soul again. You may live on the earth, but whenever you do die, you will spend eternity in hell. This shakes you out of your slumber, but only to the degree that you get drunk for 3 days out of the 7 that you think you have left. This doesn't sound like a very good life, I know, but hold on. You're about to meet someone who will literally save your life and give you a future filled with hope. On the 4th day after the dream, before you go to bed, you will pray this prayer, and it will change your life forever. God, if you're real, I need you to show me. I'm here to tell you that from that exact moment on, you will be gloriously saved. That very day, you will meet Jesus, your Creator. You will wake up the next morning and be a brand new person from the inside out. Where you were once empty, you will be filled to overflowing with hope and life and a confidence that you haven't had a whiff of since you were a small child. From that day on, you will never again need drugs or alcohol because Jesus will be all you need. Ah, the music. What happens with the music and your singing? Well, a few months after you get saved, you will start attending a big church. It's there that you pick up your public singing again. You never will hit stardom, per se, but you will get to do something even cooler than that. Throughout your life, you will get tons of opportunities to sing for God. You will record 1 tape, 2 professional blues CDs, and several other CDs, all filled with original music. That's right. The Lord will allow you to create songs out of nothing. Not only will you sing songs, but you will write songs too. But wait, I have to tell you something else that's very important. I know you never want to get married because you think no one stays together anyway. But guess what? You will say, I do. You will marry a guy who loves you and who will help you to fulfill a spiritual calling that God will give to you. This guy, his name is Kurt, is a big reason that you will do concerts and make those tapes and CDs I mentioned earlier. He will just happen to be a sound man and a recording engineer and a super smart guy who will bring you joy on many levels. Will your marriage stay together? You betcha. I'll tell you more about that later. On a different note, you know how you're suffering right now and being made fun of because of your hair? Well, it turns out that your sister-in-law, Kelly, will be a hairdresser. Thanks to her, your hair, which has been the bane of your existence, will turn out to be one of your best assets. It's crazy, but at one point, your hair will become an actual style that people will pay good money for. No kidding. I know this is hard to believe, but I still have more to tell you. After spending your whole adolescence alone with virtually no friends, no real friends, guess what? Jesus will give you deep friendships with other Christians. Through these relationships, God will heal you, teach you, and help you to grow up. And some of these people will be friends for a time in your life, and many of them will become lifetime friends. You see, what you think is impossible right now, having real friends and being happy, will become a reality for you if you hold on. And just when you think your life couldn't get any more bizarre, not only will you get married, but you will have 2 sons. Sorry, I should have told you to sit down first before blurting that out. You'll name them Levi and Jonathan after guys in the Bible. They will grow up to be fine young men who will make you proud and bring joy to your soul. But it gets even better than that. They will each get married to talented women who love Jesus. And you will love them too. Can you even imagine this? You will become a wife, a mother, and a mother-in-law. Are you sitting down yet? Because I'm about to set your mind into orbit. When you are 48 years old, your oldest son, Levi, and his wife will have a child. I bet you never thought you would be a grandma, but you will be. Are you catching what I'm throwing here? You never actually win a Grammy for music, but you will become a Grammy. How cool is that? And all of this is fine and dandy, but I bet you're wondering if you will finally be happy in the future. Well, that's a good question, and I'm so glad you asked. The answer to that question is a resounding yes. But happy isn't really the right word. It's more like content, filled, satisfied, and over the top blessed. But yeah, I guess happy works too. By the way, you will move to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in 2010 and will absolutely love it. You will live in a really small town, which is weird after growing up in the suburbs. Truth be told, you won't want to move there from Florida at first, but the strange thing is that in that place, you will find your place. God planted some really cool seeds in you a long time ago that will come to fruition in the years you spend living in the UP. It's a good feeling to be doing what you know God wants you to do, where He wants you to be doing it. Among other things, you will lead worship music at a great church. You will learn how to play guitar shortly after you become a Christian. You will help teach Bible studies and write a column in a newspaper. There's more. Hold on to your seat. Right now, this very day in 2016, you will be writing your first book. Writing a book! It's a book about suicide called Just Hold On. God is going to use your experience with suicide and sadness to help others. Would you look at that? You actually don't turn out to be a loser after all. So you see, you have a future. As dark as it is for you at 13, it will get darker, but if you just hold on, you will not only survive, you will love life. And through your relationship with Jesus, you will be a help to others who are hurting. At present, you are celebrating 28 years of marriage and 30 years as a Christian. You've seen the Lord deliver on every one of His promises to you without fail. It's funny. Your default is to give up when things get tough, but after you meet Jesus, when everything comes against you, you just want to try harder. You don't see any sign of quitting. Your future is secure, and you plan to serve Jesus with your very last breath. Note to self, just hold on. God has great things in store for you. Your future is real, and it's beautiful. It's not always easy, but today, you have no regrets. You try your best, and countless people are blessed as a result. In fact, some people will actually exist because you didn't give up. Because when you think about it, it's not just your future you're deciding today. Just hold on. Life will get better. I promise. Real life success stories. She tried and failed at death, but held on and succeeded at life. From the interviews. Here's how life turned out for two people who failed at the attempt at suicide, but held on and succeeded in life. Christina. Struggling with childhood memories of physical abuse and an aftermath of feeling worthless and alone, Christina made her first unsuccessful suicide attempt at the age of 15. Lacking purpose for living, in her late teens, she turned to alcohol and drugs. Her downward spiral continued and eventually led to 2 more suicide attempts. In her mid-20s, Christina had a career and many material possessions, but was completely empty inside. She was writing songs for a hobby and learning to play guitar when one day, Christina heard the voice of God say to her, "When are you going to start writing songs for me?" That was the day everything changed for Christina. That was the day, she says, I was filled with purpose. Today she is a wife and mother of 2 and a grandma. Among other things, she is the author of 3 books, a songwriter, musician, media producer, and minister of Jesus Christ. Christina's main goal every day is to help someone find hope. She uses social media as an avenue to spread a message of encouragement through her blog, newstrength.wordpress.com. Millions of people have been blessed by her Praise in Motion music YouTube channel for kids at youtube.com/praiseinmotionmusic. And many have found hope on her website, ChristinaCookLee.com. If Christina had succeeded in death, she would not have been able to help countless people to thrive and to love life. Ironically, Christina was told as a child that she would not amount to much. But look at her now. Because she held on, Christina's life is living proof that God can turn our messes into messages and make beauty out of ashes. Don't give up. Even though you can't see it right now, you have a beautiful future full of purpose in life. It's just up ahead of you, but you've got to hold on. Brian. After 27 years in prison, being addicted to drugs, run-ins with the law, Satanism, and a hate-filled violent life, Brian has become a faithful husband, father of 4, and a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Through his motorcycle ministry and other avenues, he is a speaker and encouragement to people all over the country. When asked the question, how is this world better because you are still in it? His answer was, I'm one more warrior for the kingdom, one more voice letting people know there's hope in this dying world. Some of Brian's tattoos will tell you that his past was steeped in darkness, but his life today tells a different story of light and life. Brian's life proves that no one is too far gone for God to save them and to use them for the good of the world and to the glory of God. So just hold on. Your future is brighter than you can imagine. From the interviews. A note from those who had attempted suicide. My questions. What finally helped? How do you cope? And in what ways are you glad that you did not succeed in taking your own life? Lauren, I grew up. I just woke up and said, I'm tired of living this way. I got rid of all the negative influences, and today I love my life, my friends, and my family. I'm glad I didn't succeed. Christina, what finally helped me was Jesus and some Christian counseling. The main thing was hearing from God, who gave me a purpose for living. I continue to cope by doing what God called me to do, following Jesus and helping others to find hope and encouragement. Brian, I became a Christian and I grew up. My mom also helped me a lot. Today I cope by following Jesus and helping others to find their way to him. Julia, counseling, growing up, and holding on is what finally helped me. I cope today by sleeping, crocheting, walking the dog, keeping busy, and cleaning. Mary, counseling helped me. I'm so glad that I didn't succeed because I can't imagine what my death by suicide would have done to my children. They would have never recovered. I cope today by helping others. Part 2. To those who grieve the loss of a loved one to suicide. Truth be told, grieving was the subject that motivated the idea for this book. Because of my own attempts at suicide, I had been asked to speak at a suicide prevention event. At that event, I saw one of the saddest things I had ever seen. One of the speakers was a father of a daughter who had taken her own life. The man was so distraught that every word he spoke was like he was reliving the tragedy all over again. I thought, Lord, please help this man. Surely he just lost his daughter. I was floored when I found out that his daughter's suicide occurred a full 6 years earlier. It prompted the question in me, is the grief caused by suicide different from the grief caused by other ways of dying? I wanted to find out the difference in grief, if there was any, but I also wanted to find out how those folks had coped in order to help others grieve. I wondered how those of us who have never lost a person to suicide could help them. I wanted to know what to say to them. I then created a series of questions as it related to their loss and set out to interview those who have suicide grief. What I found was that grief is grief, no matter how the death happens. Death will bring loss, no matter how it occurred. However, there seems to be at least one common element in the hearts and minds of those who lose loved ones to suicide, and that is guilt. The questions, the regrets, the mistakes, the loss, all equal a suffering that can bring a despair all its own. Hard grief, long grief, survivor's grief. Coping for those left behind. Rest from your battle with regret. Having a dialogue with regret is like accepting an invitation to dance with the devil. Regret, a feeling of sadness or disappointment over something that has happened. Regret is a natural response to making a mistake. But if left unresolved, it can become a monster. Regret can take over and become an unhealthy filter through which we run all of our future experiences. It taints our future by placing blame on the past. It creates undeserved guilt and reminds us that we made a mistake that can never be remedied. Regret makes a terrible roommate, and personally, I've decided to kick it out of my house. Just the other day, I made a mistake. I zigged when I should have zagged. It wasn't a sin, though it was a mistake that I could not undo. Although no one was hurt in that scenario, I believe I made the wrong choice. I could dwell on my mistake and be miserable, or I could forget it and go on. Forget regret. The next thing I knew, I was saying this out loud. I don't regret it, but I won't repeat it. You see what happened there? I acknowledged my mistake without regret taking any power to ruin my day, or worse, my future. I will do it right the next time because I'm not dwelling on my past mistake. This is what you could call maintaining mental health. Time doesn't heal all wounds, but God can heal all wounds in time. The remedy for regret. Regret for a mistake is one thing, but when it comes to losing someone to suicide, there can be no end to the havoc regret can cause if we're not careful. Still, how we deal with small regret or big regret starts, I think, with taking only the responsibility that is ours to take. I believe one of the most tragic scars that suicide leaves on those left behind are the questions. Was there something I could have done to stop this person from dying? Maybe if I would have been more loving or not so busy, or if only I had answered the phone that day, would he still be alive? I imagine the questions can become paralyzing in themselves if we don't find some kind of resolution. Between the guilt and the regret, there has to be hope in there somewhere. In fact, I think I have a sliver of peace and freedom to offer you. It was not your fault. In some of my interviews, I was able to share a freeing truth with some of those who are still shackled by the question, was it my fault? I'm here to tell you that according to what I see in Scripture, it absolutely was not your fault. Some will believe what I'm about to say and some will not, but I hope all will at least consider what I'm trying to convey. For me, it's all started with my grandma, who died a few years ago. When it happened, I was convinced that she was killed by the medical system. For months, I was angry, until one day, when I was memorizing Psalm 139, I came to verse 16. Your eyes have seen my unformed substance, and in your book were all written the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them. I thought about that. The days that were ordained for me. Then I reasoned that there are a certain number of days that are given to each one of us. We don't die from cancer or accidents or even suicide. We die when the number of our days are up. Our time simply runs out. No one dies too soon or too late. If the death wasn't by suicide, then it would have been by some other way on that particular day. I guess that means that we are kind of indestructible until our days are done here on earth. Still, I don't understand the way, but I understand that there is a day. A specific lifetime is given to each human being by the Creator of all things. No matter how, we will all die on the day we were ordained to die. That's what I see in the Scriptures, and that truth set me free from blaming people for the death of my grandma. In fact, I don't blame anyone for someone dying anymore. Don't get me wrong, I hate death, but it's no one's fault. If you choose to believe that God is in charge of both the day of birth and the day of death, you can be set free right now from any kind of survivor's guilt. Yes, you and I have made mistakes, even with our loved ones, but the best thing we can do with those mistakes is to learn from them and try to help others to find peace in the midst of their own nightmare of suicide. The way I see it, even our mistakes are not the cause of anyone's death. It's not your fault that your loved one died. You are not responsible for the life or death of another human being. Only God can control that. We just have to do the best we can to live out the number of days that God has given to each one of us in a way that pleases Him. Grieving the answers. Those of us who have not experienced grief from suicide will never fully understand your pain, but at least we can acknowledge that it exists. At least we can try to help you in your recovery and pray for your healing. Did you know that you are precious? You are a precious creation of God too. Did you know that God sees your suffering and that He's never left you alone? All of us can find our comfort in Him. Only God can understand and fix your broken heart, and He wants to do just that. One day, as I was grieving the loss of my friend who had died, I asked the Lord, why am I grieving so hard for her? There had been some conflict in our friendship that had caused some questions in me. I had wanted to ask her about these things, but every time I would try, I realized that it wouldn't be good for her health. She was sick, and I didn't want to upset her. Even on her deathbed, I couldn't ask her about these things that troubled me because obviously it wasn't about me. She was dying, and it was my job to be there for her. About 4 months after she died, I received the answer to my question. I believe God showed me that I wasn't necessarily grieving the loss of my friend as much as I was grieving the loss of the answers to the questions that I had for her. She took the answers with her to the grave, and now I would never know this side of heaven. It was at that point that I had a profound encounter with the Lord. I verbally needed to release the answers I was grieving to God. As I did that, I felt an immediate peace wash over me. And then I sensed something else that the Lord was giving to me. He reminded me that He is the God of all answers, and that nothing is impossible for Him. He knew the answers to the questions I had for my friend, and if He saw fit, He could tell me. I didn't have to grieve the answers. They were still there. It didn't take too long before I just didn't need to know anymore. The hard grief I was feeling lifted from that day on. I have no more regrets, and the need for answers no longer consumes me. God can do anything, and we can ask Him for anything. John 14:14. If you have questions about your loved one, why not take them to the only one who knows the answer? From the interviews. Every person grieves differently, but I wanted to find out what helped those who were grieving the suicide death of their loved one. I wanted to know what things were helpful during their grieving process and what things were not helpful. This is what I found. Helpful grief responses. People were sympathetic, prayed, brought meals, sent texts, came for short visits, sent cards, offered to talk about deceased loved one, gave hugs, said, "I'm sorry for your loss." From a mom, one of the most helpful cards I got said, "I don't know what to say. I love you." Not helpful grief responses, awkward, tried to ignore the situation, wouldn't talk about loved one, too much attention, tried to give advice. One more thought for those who grieve. The 23rd Psalm is a wonderful and comforting portion of Scripture that continues to help people through the process of grieving. You may have heard this verse at your loved one's memorial service. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Psalm 23:4. As I was thinking about this verse the other day, I was struck with this part of it. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Notice that we walk through the valley. We don't stop. We walk through. We may walk slowly, but we can never, ever stop in that valley of the shadow of death. We aren't meant to stop there. Whether it's our time of death or we're grieving the death of another, none of us is meant to stay in the valley of the shadow of death. I think because of regret and other things, many people have not only stopped in that valley after the tragedy of suicide, but they have built homes there. The darkness of the shadow has become so normal to them that they feel more comfortable in their sorrow of death than in the light of the living. If you have built a house there in that valley, I implore you, get up and move. God doesn't want you to live in the shadow of death any longer. He never meant for you to put down roots in that valley, but only to walk through that darkness. Do you know what causes a shadow? Light is the reason for the shadow. An object, death in this case, displaces the light for a time, causing a shadow of darkness to form. If we keep moving toward the light, that shadow will disappear from our presence, not because it moved away from us, but because we moved away from it. What do you think the last part of that verse means? Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Simplistically speaking, the rod of the shepherd was used to discipline the sheep and also as a defensive tool to protect the sheep. The staff, with its curved top, was more for gently guiding the sheep or for lifting them out of precarious situations. So how do the rod and staff comfort us when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death and darkness? Because God is holding the rod, we know that nothing will hurt us, and He is using the staff to keep us moving toward the light and out of the valley. Yes, we will grieve. It's part of being human, but we can't put down roots in death. We can't effectively live there, or we will not survive. Death is a part of life, but death doesn't have to be our life. All right. That concludes part 3, installment number 3, for Just Hold On, Finding Hope in the Face of Suicide. I do hope that somebody got some comfort out of there. That's part of my couple of my favorite parts in the book, and I believe anointed by God to help people, bring comfort.